Do you know who I think you might find yourself agreeing with? British Prime Minister Keir Starmer. Like, a lot of that sounds like probably what's in his head right now.
So in this clip, we are going to see an ally of Donald Trump. I believe she is one of the spokespersons for Republicans overseas. We're going to see her get pressed by a British journalist here that you can see on the screen. Almost to the point, towards the end of the clip, she actually becomes a hypocrite and she contradicts herself because the whole spiel that she made goes against what it is that she says towards the end. As usual, let's watch the clip in full. I'm going to give you guys my thoughts, my perspective towards the end. Let's get into it.
Let's chew this over with Jennifer Ewing, who represents Republicans overseas. Hello, Jennifer.
Hi.
Why was the president so personally rude about our Prime Minister?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I don't think this is happening just because of the Prime Minister not allowing the U.S. to use Diego Garcia. I think this has been building for a long time. And I think the two countries, despite the special relationship, have some fundamental differences. Such as energy security. It's one of the big things that Trump ran on and that he's very, serious about. Number two, border security, another thing that Trump ran on that he's very serious about. And then I guess if you want to dig in a little deeper, there have been a lot of spats around free speech, whether it's the online safety bill. We know that $30 billion trade tech deal was canceled because of the online safety bill. So I think there's just some fundamental differences going on between the two countries.
But why bring that up so publicly when you've got another European leader sat there?
Yeah, I
in the full glare of publicity.
Exactly. I was thinking about MERS during that time, and when he was just sitting there and how that must have felt. But the other thing I think we can look at is not just the UK and the US kind of going in different directions. It's also a difference between Eastern and Western Europe and the America First. Trump administration is kind of more aligned with the Central and Eastern European countries who value, their sovereignty more and that sort of thing. So I think that's something to keep an eye on. I believe if the president really thought that Keir Starmer was doing this because it's the best thing for the British people, he might respect it a bit more. But I think the other things that the Prime Minister has done in the past shows that maybe he doesn't have, the British people.
So actually the stuff about Diego Garcia and providing the basis for attacking Iran, that's actually a bit of a red herring. You're saying the problems are actually way deeper than that.
I believe so, yes. I remember being asked by the House of Lords right after the president was elected last year, so say a little over a year, what do you think that the Trump being reelected means for the special relationship? And I said, along with a colleague of mine, Greg Swenson from Republicans Overseas UK, that there's going to be some differences. Energy security, which we know President Trump has been telling Europe for years, you've got to be drilling, don't rely so much on Russia. We see what's happened now with the EU maybe now having to go back. So, and then the other thing, obviously, being border security and free speech.
OK, Oliver, as the Labour representative on the programme, all this effort that Keir Starmer has put into the special relationship clearly hasn't worked, listening to Jennifer.
Well, let me just go back to what Jennifer has said, because Jennifer has said she thinks there is fundamental differences between the two countries. I'm not sure there are fundamental differences between our two countries. If you look at the polling in the States, I think about 51% of people in America think this attack on Iran has been a bad idea, 39% strongly oppose it. There may be differences between the two leaders. I think that is absolutely fair. But when it comes to our two countries, I was in the States last week working with Democrat mayors, Republican mayors, working on deals between our two regions. And that was going great. And those relationships between mayors, between places, between businesses,
so basically just
between
ignore what Donald Trump said yesterday.
No, absolutely not. I think where Donald Trump and Keir Starmer agree is you've got to put your country first. Donald Trump says America first. Keir Starmer is clearly putting the British interest first.
Callum?
Look, I'm saddened to see this. I mean, this is a very grave moment for the UK's security and for what's going on in the world. And resorting to name-calling and criticism like this is not the way to conduct diplomacy between us 12 allies. It's true, we have a difference of agreement, and that's reasonable. It is quite right that the UK should take its stance. We Liberal Democrats believe that this war is illegal, and we regret very much that the US and Israel have conducted it unilaterally. We've now been sucked into it because of Iran's retaliation, and that's what we as Parliament need to now discuss with the Prime Minister and hold him to account for the actions.
So are the Lib Dems then supporting the defensive military action that the UK is taking now?
We are very concerned that this so-called defensive-offensive separation hasn't been clearly defined by the Prime Minister. He hasn't been been able to define what the difference is between the two. And we've been very clear over time.
Oh, no,
as
he has,
been,
though. It said it's about attacking missile launchers and the capacity for Iran to launch missiles that could target British interests. That's pretty clear.
What we're allowing to happen is for US planes to take off from our bases, the sorties they fly on, the targets they hit are not being seen by UK eyes. And it's all too easy for that to then slide into the UK being complicit in actions that could potentially be illegal. So what we want is the government to come forward clearly and set out the limits of its authorisation, how it's going to monitor that, and give Parliament a clear sense that offensive operations would lead to a vote before we committed the UK to war.
OK, Ella, this jibe that it's not Winston Churchill, I mean, you can imagine that hurting a Conservative Prime Minister. Is that much of a big deal for a Labour Prime Minister? They don't harken back to Churchill very often, do they?
I don't think Starmer even has ambitions on being Churchillian, and I don't mean that as a compliment, by the way. I think he probably should in certain contexts, the prospect of international conflict being one of them. You opened this segment by saying, was he working in the British national interest? I don't think that was his first priority. With Keir Starmer, the emphasis is always on legality, which has been raised here, the question of what is legal or not, which is really a means of sort of excusing away your inability to make a decision on perhaps a moral, political, question. At the background to all of this is, an existential crisis with a country like Iran, threats to the West. I think, it's not a question of the US saying jump and the UK saying, OK, how high? But it's quite clear that the decisions or the indecision that Keir Starmer's displayed wasn't from a sort of solid ideological basis, but on this kind of flimsy, was it legal or not? I'm not suggesting that the British public are raring to go for war, but there's a weakness inherent in that sort of fence-sitting, which I think doesn't chime with any of us.
Oliver?
I find it slightly bizarre to say that adhering to international law and looking at international law as the bellwether as to whether you make a decision is the wrong approach. I think it's absolutely right to.
No, but because if I can just be clear, it's because Keir Starmer cares about an international framework.
Then you can come back.
Let me just respond to what you said, because it's absolutely right to say I don't think Keir Starmer is trying to be Winston Churchill. I think what he's trying to do is navigate a course through what is an incredibly tricky set of circumstances. I think anybody on either side of this, and I appreciate where the Lib Dems are, I don't think you're in this place at all, but I think, you look at where Reform are, you look at where the Greens are, you look at where the Tories are, saying there is an easy solution to this if you just do this one thing. It's just simply not true. It's incredibly difficult. The Prime Minister is navigating what are incredibly difficult circumstances, and I think he's getting it just about right.
There are different interpretations of what international law says here, and he's chosen one interpretation.
Well, the government have chosen one interpretation, I think that is fair to say. And the government will need to prove that they are right. And I agree that it needs to come before Parliament, and there needs to be a conversation in Parliament amongst MPs and amongst the government.
I mean, the point I'd make to what you said, Heather, is that there's no evidence that the US consulted the UK on this attack. So, we talk about what should the UK's approach is, has to be reactive to something that has been done by a country that we have previously thought we had an alliance with. And then you need to look at ends and means. This has been a violent attack on Iran. There's no evidence that airstrikes are the way in which to achieve regime change or to deliver some of the outcomes that Trump's talked about. And his war goals, any war effort should have a clear set of objectives, a course of action and some measure of success. Well, and what we hear from the White House is a divergence across a whole range of different topics.
There's no indication that Trump even wants. I mean, he changes every day whether or not he does want regime change. But that is, I don't think anybody here would mourn the death of the supreme leader or indeed want some manner of change for Iranians. I think what Keir Starmer has been shown to have done is having to scrabble to come to really, at this point, what is a position which is kind of in line with Trump anyway. Yeah. Well, this defensive-offensive thing is unconvincing.
Let's put some of those points to Jennifer from Republicans overseas. And we just saw some pictures of Keir Starmer heading to PMQs, so he's left Downing Street now. Yeah, Jennifer, what is the number one goal of this military action against Iran that's being conducted by President Trump?
You know what? That's a great question, and even
because we don't know.
Well, yeah, exactly. Ella
we don't know what they're trying to achieve.
No, and actually, I'll say that as a Republican, and there's a big discussion.
Doesn't that worry you? Your country's launched a massive war with no end
yes,
goal?
Yes, it does.
Right.
100%. Yeah, it does. And
maybe they shouldn't have done it then.
Well, time will tell whether we should have done it or not. And I think the questions rather that need to be answered is how imminent was the nuclear threat from Iran, especially assuming we had obliterated it in the June 12th
how
day war.
imminent do you think it was?
Well, I don't know. We're given very different answers, right? I mean, apparently that was obliterated in the 12-day war in June. And then the second thing is, what is the likelihood that we'll have an efficient and effective Western-friendly regime after this is all over? And nobody knows the answers to that question. So even within the Republican Party, there is a major discussion going on around, is this what people voted for, right? I mean, so people support President Trump, but he also ran on no new wars that are not existential to the United States of America. That's why people did not want the United States involved in Ukraine, Russia. It wasn't existential to us.
Yeah.
We have enough problems at home with the economy and border and healthcare. So you're going to keep an eye on, and I'm sure you guys are, on different voices within the Trump-supporting Republican Party about these actions.
And it sounds to me you're a voice that's opposed to it. And therefore, you're opposed to Donald Trump now.
I think that I'm not opposed to Donald Trump, but I think there's a lot of questions that need to be answered. And if he is going to make this more than we just take out Ayatollah Khomeini, which again, I agree with Ella, I don't think anybody's losing tears over that. If it continues to 2 weeks, 4 weeks, and even longer, people are understandably going to be having flashbacks to, Afghanistan and these 20-year wars, which again, nobody voted for. So
the thing for you will be how long it goes on for. You could live with it if it's for a couple of weeks, but you couldn't live with it if it's for 6 months, 2 years.
And it's not just me, it's the people who voted for him. And then you add on top of that the people who can't stand him and will use every mistake, every, God forbid, American body bag that comes back to America as, working against him in the 2026 midterms and the 2028 election. So politically, I would say it's one of the riskiest things he's done. Now,
Would you wish he hadn't done it?
Well, again, I can't, it's too early to tell. It's highly risky, though. And I think Americans got quite fortunate, lucky, spoiled, maybe, with the fact that in 2021, Trump took out Soleimani and there was no blowback. At the time, a lot of people thought that it would be the, World War III. That didn't happen. And then again, this past June with the 12-day war, a little bit of blowback, but not really. It was all kind of controlled.
Do you think
this is
Trump
different.
got a little bit drunk on those surgical strikes, thinking that he could just replicate them on a bigger scale?
I don't get drunk. That's
I mean, he's
your
teetotal.
word.
He's teetotal.
Well,
It's a
teetotal.
rhetorical
Yeah.
device.
Look, it's politically risky because America, especially those people who voted for him, do not have the tolerance, nor does he have a mandate to enter into another war that most people probably had to Google what an Ayatollah was, right? Now, I hope I'm wrong. I hope that this ends very, very quickly with wonderful results and the rest of the world is safer because of it.
Do you know who I think you might find yourself agreeing with? British Prime Minister Keir Starmer. Like, a lot of that sounds like probably what's in his head right now.
You know what? That's why I said if I thought, and I didn't vote for Keir Starmer, I'm not a Labour supporter, and I disagree with the fact that he's doing this in the British public. I think, like some of the panel said, he's doing this because of legal reasons, which is something that America would look at and be like, that's just too bureaucratic, right?
Well, no, legal reasons and what he thinks is in the national interest. It's
do you,
two things.
Do you believe that Keir Starmer has acted in the best interest of the British people since he's been in office?
Why do you think he hasn't?
Because I think most people are not very pleased with the way he has run this country. And that could be people on the left, people in the center, people in the growing right. I mean, look what just happened in, with the Green election taking over a Labour stronghold. So we've got these fractions both on the left and the right, but I don't think anyone thinks, Keir Starmer is a British populist, meaning he does what's in the national interest of British people.
Ella, are you witnessing giant cracks opening up in the...
So I'm going to pause it right there. I will leave a link in the description below so you guys can go and check it out in full if you guys want to. But I'm confused because this is the thing for me. As a Brit who lives here in the United Kingdom, I am glad Keir Starmer took the approach and the stance that he did to this war, because she said all of those things that she did say against Keir Starmer and why Donald Trump is probably annoyed and angry with Keir Starmer. But then it turns out that she justified Keir Starmer in her response in the end. Hence the reason why the host said, you know who I think you might find yourself agreeing with? Prime Minister Keir Starmer. The whole stance, the whole argument of what she was doing and what she was talking about, she completely undone simply because of the fact that her stance is the same stance as Keir Starmer. And understand this, if Donald Trump's own base, people that are in his party, lawmakers in his party, they don't understand why he's doing this, why would Keir Starmer put the British people in harm's way because of an illegal war which nobody knows why we're fighting? Why? It wouldn't make sense to do that. If Keir Starmer was to go and send British soldiers to go and die on behalf of the flag, but it was for a cause that we the people absolutely don't understand, the same way Republicans, Democrats, MAGA, the American people don't understand, he would get the worst backlash, very similar to the way that Tony Blair gets backlash for the war in Iraq. So it just doesn't make any sense. That's why the frustration and the anger makes no sense. It's a moot point and it's ridiculous. Let me know your guys' thoughts on this exchange in the comment section below. Because it's just weird to me how she just said all the things, rambled, and then completely undone her entire argument towards the end. Let me know your guys' thoughts down in the comment section below. And while you guys are down there, do me a favor, hit the subscribe button and also give the video a thumbs up as well. Appreciate you guys. Also, guys, hype up the video. Do me a favor and hype the video for me. Push it, get it in front of as many people as possible. Appreciate you guys. See you guys in the next clip.